We learned last week that within the Beinoni there's two levels. There is the Avodai and Le'avodai. Now we're not going to go into the details of the Pasuk because we elaborated on this last week, how the Rebbe clearly extracts from the Pasuk in the end of Tanakh, which indicates that within the Beinoni there's two levels. One, a Beinoni which serves Hashem, and one, a Beinoni does not serve Hashem. So, how's that possible? Beinoni, by definition, is somebody that his Yitzhak is fully intact. So, what does it mean he does not serve Hashem? The whole definition of the Beinoni, that he's an Oved Elikim, that he never got rid of his Yitzhak, right? As we remember, to briefly recap the difference of the Beinoni and the Tzaddik, is that the Beinoni is somebody who, the Tzaddik is someone who got rid of his Yitzhak to degrees, right? There's tens of thousands of levels of tzaddikim, but the quintessence tzaddik is somebody who got rid of his Yitzhara completely, and therefore the Rabbi uses lashon. He's not called an Eved Hashem. He's called an Eved Hashem. He's already a servant, like you say, for example. When I say the ideal tzaddik, because even the non-ideal, in other words, the different lower levels than the quintessent level of the tzaddik, is also somebody who you can call to a certain degree an Eved Hashem. But let's use the overall term of the tzaddik is somebody who made a deep dent in his Yitzhara to the extent that he could even be transformed his Yitzhara. He's not called an Eved Hashem. He got rid of his Yitzhara. Why is calling someone an Eved? For example, he put feathers in somebody's back. It's not a toil to schlep them. You put stones on somebody's back, it's a toil to schlep them. Right? Or even if you want to use something that's the same weight, but if it's stones, you feel the schlep. If it's diamonds, you don't feel the schlep, because you know that every small piece is worth millions, as an example. The tzaddik is taken, he's transformed. His Yitzhara loves HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so there's no weight. It's diamonds for him. And so all the whole schlep is diamonds, means to say that he knows that he's in a task to elevate this world, to make this world an abode for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for Hashem. So he's not, there's no service involved. That's why he's called a term. He has a definition, Eved Hashem. He's a servant already, not an Oved. Oved, someone who's in the middle of a toil. That's the Beinoni, right? His Yitzhak is in full tax. So every moment he has the struggle. Time and again he has a struggle. We said not only every hour, every minute, sometimes every millisecond. He has to control and he has to make sure that he's aligned 100% with Ratzon Hashem. So he's an Oved Hashem. A tzaddik is Eved, and the Rebbe adds these, if you didn't pick up, the Melech and a king, for example. When you say a melech, it's not someone who's striving to be a king. He is already a king. He is a melech. Or you say somebody is a chacham. He's not somebody who's just becoming a chacham. He is already. It's an intrinsic term. So to the tzaddik is an Eved Hashem. He's already a servant because he has no Yitzhahara. He got rid of the Yitzhahara already. A Beinoni, by definition, his Yitzhara is intact. That itself says that he's an Oved, he's in the middle of the service, and he's struggling, and he's constantly at war and at battle, and to overcome the challenges of the signals of the Nefesh Bahamis. So when you say a Beinoni, ideally, you're right away saying he's an Oved Hashem, he's in the middle of the phone. Because again, the Beinoni, by definition, is someone who has a Yitzhara. So if you have a Yitzhara and you have a Tetev, you're in the middle of the Avodah, middle of the service, middle of the battle, you call it an Oved Hashem. Comes out to Rebbe and says that within the Beinoni there is a definition of Le'avodai, that he doesn't serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How is that ever possible? He's not the tzaddik. He still has Yitzhara. How can it be? How can it be that he's an Oved? He could be a Beinoni and not a Le'avodai. He doesn't serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Rebbe says, very interestingly, this is something which is in personality. That in personality, sometimes you have a certain person that to do what's right is not a struggle. Even the hardest mitzvah, which we explained a number of times, that limud Torah, learning Torah, is the most hardest mitzvah to implement. Right? You find certain people. Right? Last week, actually, somebody came over to me near the shir, who was part of the shir, and said that you didn't use the term. I believe it should have been the term of depression, but I precisely didn't use the word depression, because depression is a little bit more like a harsh statement. It's an unhealthy state of a person when a person is depressed. Melancholy, perhaps, maybe a little more accurate over here, that somebody, certain times, for example, people are down in spirit, they could sit and learn assiduously for hours on end. It's a fact. The biggest, many readers, and not even associated with Torah, for that matter. People just readers into philosophy, exercising their intellect. in intellectual pursuits. They could be hours on end reading and figuring and learning, but many times it's a result of their kind of melancholy state, which is not associated with any decision that we are going to do what's right. Instead of bumming around, we're going to just learn and pursue the intellectual, or the Yid will learn Torah for such a long time. Many times it's associated with a certain personality. Like I said, it was commented, maybe use the word something to the depressed people, that right away they have their heads in their studies. But again, I try not to use that, because that's not just that's a Marash Chayres, as someone says, the Lashon Al Tereb is Marash Chayres as opposed to Mara Levana, which is like I say, it's not short of using that term, but it means someone who's definitely down in spirit. You could learn Torah on end. He opens a Gemara, you could sit for 5 hours. Is it a good thing learning Torah? Yeah, obviously it's the biggest mitzvah in the Torah, but why is he doing it? Not because he made a decision that really I want to go talk and chat and have more of a relaxed time, and because this is the time of designated learning Torah, that's why I'm going to learn Torah. That's not why he's learning Torah. He's learning Torah because this suits his spirit at the time. Or not only at the time, this is the type of personality he is. And therefore he could learn Torah not 2 hours or 3 hours, he could learn Torah for 5 hours, but there's no BAYT over here, there's no service. Because that's who he is. Aidal Rebbe, again, just some tidbits of last week's class. Aidal Rebbe says, what about somebody what about in the negative, in the sur meira, to remove oneself from evil? Doesn't that take avay? Doesn't that take service on any level? This is not to speak a good lashon hara. Or namely, as we mentioned, the real struggle of a person is in the context of modesty. To maintain a pure thought, speech, and action, namely thought, that is my thought should be pure and aligned with the Torah's mandate. To maintain a pure thought. Isn't that inevitable when someone has a Yetzer Hara, that he's always going to struggle to maintain a pure mind? So to give me an example, learning Torah. Learning Torah is in the positive. You could find a person that is not associated with Avodas Hashem. It's not associated with Avodah, it's not associated with toil, because that's his personality. But what about the Leisesa? To keep a pure mind to someone who still has a Yetzer Hara, that's pretty hard. As we all know it, that the struggles on a constant basis. We have the ability to overcome the Yetzer Hara, but do we know how many signals the Yetzer Hara could send? Again, maybe something 10 signals per minute, or maybe more. And you're saying a Beinani, he has a Yetzer Hara, which is inevitably sending signals, and he is a Beinani, which again by definition he's never a Rasha even for a moment, means, he never transgressed, because the moment you transgress once, you're not a Beinani anymore, you're in a Rasha. So how could you say he's Le'avad, he's not serving a Kodesh Baruch Hu? To maintain a pure thought, inevitably you have to be a service. Says that there's certain people who do not have any conflicts because of their frigid nature. They're cold. The Lashon Al Rebbe before, it says Einei Milchama. He doesn't have conflict of the natural taivus, lust that the human being, the human mind is many times driven to. As we all know it, or at least we know it challenges. Not we allow these machshavas chas v'shalom to enter, because the moment that we accept these thoughts right away, we're not called beinanim, but we know the struggle. So there's certain people by division, they're frigid, they're cold in nature, they don't have much of these struggles. So you have somebody who comes to Asay Tev, he does all the mitzvahs, comes to the hardest mitzvah of the Torah, which is to learn Torah, not to utilize every moment which is designated for the learning Torah. Again, it's a case-by-case idea. There's certain people, the Rav will tell them that according to Allah, you have to learn 7 hours a day. Certain people, the Rav will tell them based on their schedule and their commitments to communal work, or personally their time when they have to be in their office and so on, and their work, that they have three times a day. But everybody's obligated to learning Torah. Depends, in a case by case. But the time which is designated for learning Torah, there's certain people that they would fill their time 100% learning Torah, but without any struggle. This is their personality. It's a Beinani, which does the mitzvahs perfectly, but Le'avada, he doesn't serve a Kodesh Baruch Hu. He's not doing it as a service because he's serving. He's not doing it because he had to make a decision. Yet there's then the other, and then there's the Beinani, and again even Leisasa, which again to fight the struggles of overcome the struggles of the signals of the Yetzer Hara, which usually sends to the average person's mind. This person is very different by nature. He's a cold person. He doesn't have the average taivus which the average person has, and even other tannoas and other pleasures and so on. He's cold. Mechusar hergish hanoah b'tivila. The Rebbe says he naturally lacks any feeling of enjoyment. Rare, not the norm, but it exists. So he's aligned with the Ratzon Hashem, but there's no Avodah. So he's a Beinoni, but there's no Avodah. So what is the ideal? The ideal Beinoni is someone who's a Beinoni. He's normal, he's upbeat, and he's good-spirited. And then when he sits down for a Gemara, usually someone who's a little more upbeat. It's hard to sit for 2 hours and learn consecutively, without any interruption. But if that's the time when I have to learn Taina mandates that I have to learn, so how am I going to learn for those 2 hours if I'm more of an upbeat person? I don't have this melancholy problem. I couldn't do it, but then am I doing it is because I'm an Eved Hashem. At that point, because I have something, I'd rather stop learning and so on, and I make a decision, no, the Eibishter wants me to learn. And I know that he ponders in the greatness of the reality of a Kodesh, so he wants me to learn. That's why I'm learning. So I can learn for those 2 hours. But my whole 2 hours is the Beinoni, which is Eved Hashem. And the same thing if I'm a regular person, which usually has these taivas coming through, namely his mind, and I hold myself back not to entertain my mind with something which Teda says, don't entertain your mind. I'm not a frigid person, type of person. I'm a regular person. The harmony within the harmonies and the everything within the person. In other words, everything is in zinc. His mind, his spirit is very normal. Call it right, and then hence and therefore as a result, he can and usually would have these signals which the Yitzhahara would send into his mind to entertain his mind, which different ideas, again in the context of modesty, what Teda says, and then he says no, he can say no. And he does say no, but when he says no and he keeps a pure mind, it's a Beinoni, which is Eved Hashem. Because everything about him is a service. Hashem says no, therefore is no. Hashem says yes, what I have to do, that's why I'm doing it. So it's all about the Beinoni, it's all about serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So there's 2 types of Beinoni, the Beinoni Le'avad and the Beinoni Avad. Comes out to them in this week today and says, you should know that even the Beinoni, which is Eved Hashem, there could be a state of Le'avad. And I'll just say this very briefly, orally, that in the end of the day, that somebody took him a struggle to, let's take it an hour, to learn an hour, consecutive hour without interruption. So he's learning, and he's learning Teda, and that first time he had to learn for a full hour. It was a struggle for him. And then, but he overcame the struggle because he's in Beinoni Eved Hashem. The next day, that hour becomes easier. You know what? If you do it hour, you learn Teda an hour for 5-6 days in a row, or 5-6 weeks in a row, it becomes the norm by you. That hour is no more a struggle. So the same Beinoni, which was Eved Hashem, which was one who served the HaKadosh Baruch Hu as a direct result of his conscious demonstration or a conscious subordination to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that same Beinoni, when he gets used to a certain type of Avodah, he becomes again a Le'avada if he still sticks to his previous schedule. That's why it's important that a person constantly adds and increases in Avodas Hashem. How much could one add? There's no end to how much could one add, because God is infinite, His Torah is infinite, and our service can ultimately be infinite. And if you could pinpoint, we know that people who are work with themselves in Avodas Hashem, there is no end. Especially when it comes to learning Teda. If I'm learning Teda an hour, and yesterday was a struggle, today it's no more struggle. So yesterday I was an Eved Hashem, today I'm not an Eved Hashem. What's the solution? Learn an hour in 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes are going to be a struggle. That's how the human body works. That it notices, it follows the previous day's schedule, and then when it comes to a certain time, right, when you wake up sometimes early in the morning for a few days, you need an alarm clock. Because the body goes along with the schedule. That's why it's always important to know. The body is not so. You could always train the body. You could always train the animal. Like you train an animal, train your nefesh bahamis. But in the end of the day, what nefesh bahamis was trained, and it's perfectly fine. And it can appreciate learning for an hour. And after the hour, right, it's almost inevitable that the first time he finishes that hour, after many times not going over the hour, that next 5 minutes is going to be a struggle. So yesterday's Avodah became today's no Avodah. What's the solution? Learn another 5 minutes if you can. And al derech in all mitzvahs. And this is what Rebbe is saying, that even the Eved Hashem could fall back to Le'avad if he's not going to continue adding in his Torah mitzvahs. That's where we're holding today. So let's try to find an insight over here. That someone who's not again studious, he accustomed himself to learn with great diligence, which means he did an Avodah, but then the problem is the custom, he accustomed himself to learn Again, in the beginning it was Hirgil Atzme, he did an Avodah, but later it became a second nature. So once it becomes a second nature, he's no more serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So again, to do that same hour, it's enough. It's enough that he just is that from a Yid which has this hidden love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like we explained, elaborated last week. And the only way that Avlei Avadei, a circumstantial Avadei, could become an Avadei to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu is only Im Kinreitz Elil Med Yeser Merigilusei, if he wants to learn more than what he's accustomed to. So in the end of the day, it's a matter, in order to be an Oved Hashem, by definition, we always have to increase. Because the moment we will keep the status quo of Aveda, we will become Le Avadei as well. Because everything can become a second nature. Even learning 10 hours can become a second nature, ideally. And so therefore it's almost, and that's why Vazei Yuvna, the Alter Rebbe explains a beautiful Gemara. The Gemara says, Eved Elikim. What is the definition of Elikim? The Gemara says, someone who learns his study 101 times. What's Le'avadei? Doesn't serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you can imagine, Le'avadei, he's probably playing outside, he's playing games. No. The Gemara says, Le'avadei is someone Sheni Pirkei Mei Pamim Levad. He only studies his study for 100 times consecutively. That's the difference of Le'avadei and Le'avadei. When it's a matter of once. What if he loses count? I mean, like, why is that the difference? If you say Le'avadei, someone who's bumming around, and Le'avadei, someone who's learning Torah is one thing. You say Le'avadei is someone who learns something 100 times. Le'avadei is something who learns 101 times. Why so? And the answer is, if you put it in this context, it's a matter of bending oneself at HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then we can understand that it's not a matter of the one time, it's a matter of overcoming the nature, overcoming this what I'm accustomed to. And he says, "Man should be mayim in the time of the Talmud." The Regilus, what was the custom? To learn every study, every lesson 100 times. And then and therefore that was the norm. So the Gemara says that's the norm. It becomes le'avadei. What is le'avadei? What it means serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu? You learn it 101 time. That extra time which you learn, because it's a decision that you're learning another time for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is lashon, is that you change a state of le'avadei to avadei. It's not just a little passage which you cross. It's an enormous difference from someone who does not serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu to someone who serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why? Because that 100 times. And he gives an example. The Gemara says, I always look about the example. I think over here sometimes, you go to the airport, you go for, where are you going? To north of Steels or south of Steels? Or are you going to Steels or going north of Steels? And what's the difference? The north of Steels is a whole difference in price, $8 difference, a $10 difference. And what is it? It doesn't matter if you go just a minute over north of Steels, because it's a different area. Which means it's a bit different, but just a little bit of an example. So these Chamarim is a marketplace of the Chamarim, of those who donkey riders. They used to rent themselves Eser Parsa Bezuzah. They used for 10 Parsa, which is a certain a measurement, or Parsa, I believe it's 4 kilometers or 8 kilometers, I'm not sure. But they used to rent to hire themselves for one zuz, for one coin, which is called a zuz. When it came la'achad parsa, for 11 parse, for a little more, so apparently you would say in our currency, 10, you would say it's $10.10. Right? Because if $10 is for, or excuse me, or bezuzah is $1. So $1 for Eser Parsa, so in our currency, if they went 11 parsa, it would be $1.10. Because for 10 you do $1, so another 1 you do another 10 cents, which is tenth of a dollar. So if it was 20, then they had officially the right to charge $2. But they didn't. For 10 they charge 1, for 11 they already charge 2. And why so? Because that was out of their territory which they were accustomed to go. They used to go back and forth. These donkey riders, you take their donkeys, take people from here to there. This was their route. You want me to go beyond something which is not the norm? You're going to pay for it not just a tenth. In other words, let's face, because it's a different idea. Because something which you're used to, you ever see sometimes you go to a place, you think it's distant, and you come back, it's like shorter, and the next time you go, wow, this is so much shorter than originally, because in the beginning you didn't know where it was and you had to go until you find it. Then, because much of our life, or a significant part of our life, is psychologically run 100%. Like some good man said, someone said, I think maybe it's exaggerating, but still he said 90% of our life is It's based on exaggeration. What I believe in everything, in all areas of life. But certainly a big part of it is true. You go to places very far, the next time you went already, it's much closer. But it isn't closer. It's because to you it's closer. And the same thing, this was part of the route, they charge us with money. You want to go beyond? You're going to pay another zuz. And this is the similar in the same thing when it came in Yoseph and because it was more than they were accustomed to. Back to the Gemara. No, back to this me'apam ve'echos rather, that zeisapam and me'avachas, this 101 time more than they were accustomed. Again, this was a standard in yeshivas to learn the lesson 100 times, so it was beyond shkula kineged kul in ways more or similar corresponding to the entire 100 times. And not only it surpasses over those 100 times with greater strength and greater intensity, because this is what makes him call Eved Elokim, someone who serves the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And the reason is because in order to change the nature of something which you're accustomed to, it won't go easily. You need Hashem. You have to, it's naturally in the context of Avodas Hashem, to doing what Hashem says to do, to the mitzvahs, and again learning Torah. In order to change the nature, you have to arouse this Aval Hashem. You have to arouse the love. You have to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in order that you, via rather pondering the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in your mind, in order to produce that willingness to go beyond your nature. You have to realize, yes, there is an Eivishter, and therefore this is an Eivishter which I love, and therefore I'm ready to do more for Hashem. And that, because that is ultimately what has the ability to govern over the nature which exists in the left side of the heart, which again, this is the situation. This is where the animal soul is situated. Which is full of blood, which is again where the nefesh bahamis connects with man, with the person's body. When nefesh bahamis comes from klipa, in order to, which is the nature of man, I feel like this. I feel like stopping. This is the way I like it. This is my nature. But to govern, to stand in dominion over this nature, it only comes via arousing one's love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu by pondering the greatness of Hashem in his mind, and mind will govern over the heart, and therefore he will follow suit and do what Hashem wants him to do. Shemimenu ateva, from the nefesh dam and the nefesh bahamis, from the animal soul, that's where the nature comes from. When you say something it's natural, it's not the kind of super unperceived or a word which is not a super rational or irrational word which is called nature, like say Mother Nature. No, it's Imenu ateva. Nature, when you say the nature, this is the way I feel naturally, this is why I'm what I'm naturally inclined to, that is directly coming from nefesh bahamis. Shemimenu ateva. It comes nature by man, that comes from the nefesh bahamis which exists in the person's heart. Again, just to be complacent and so on. So to overcome that complacency and to go beyond what I'm used to, what I'm naturally used to, that takes an effort that I have to arouse within myself the love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu by pondering in the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in mind, in order to overcome this natural laid backness which exists within the heart as a result of the nefesh bahamis. This is the complete Aveda to the Beinani. In other words, this is the ideal, the perfect service in the life of the Beinani, that all he does is learning Torah and doing mitzvahs is not something he just got used to doing, but it's something which he makes an effort, a constant effort, in order to overcome the teva, the nature, the laid backness or complacency of it, which is associated with Bahamis. That is the typical type, the true quintessent Beinani. Oi, Alter Rebbe says, within this idea of Avodah, not necessarily you have to arouse an overt love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You could also arouse this inner covert love what a Yid has to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Alter Rebbe didn't go into, later in the chapter 18, Alter Rebbe says that ultimately the Yid's love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not only that he has the ability to intellectualize and the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to produce a feeling of love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Alter Rebbe really says that in the essence of a Yid is, or what a Yid, the makeup of a Yid is something deeper. His connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or his love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is something deeper than an overt love. A love which stands in in total revelation or manifestation. What is that? The Ava Mesuteres, the hidden love. A Yid is a Yid is a Yid is a Yid. He's born with that. He received it as a inheritance from Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. And you take a child of a 1 year old or 1 minute year old, and you say, in some list, his father dies, he's a multimillionaire. On the moment, the child becomes a multimillionaire. He doesn't understand what money is all about. He doesn't understand anything. That's not what this world is all about. He just came into this world because it's an inheritance, a Yerusha, so he has everything, if he likes it or not, if he's in tune to it or not. The same way a Yid, by definition, we are Yidden, we have the inheritance of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we have a love, innate love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because we're connected by our neshama to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So there's two types of loves ultimately. Again, Alter Rebbe is going to deal with it later. But here the Alter Rebbe alludes to this. And so I'm not going to elaborate on this, but it just alludes to this because when we say two types of loves, one, the innate love, the innate inherent love of the Yiddah HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like a son to his father. He doesn't have to think much of him being his father and what he contributed and what he did for him and so on. It's just, this is his father. He can't even make it, he can't even explain with the right words why he has why he's so inclined to be connected to his parents. Because just that's how it is, because he comes from his parents, that's why he's connected to his parents. Then there's another thing, that if a father demonstrates his affection, love to his child, so the child could re-arouse, in other words, to understand the greatness of his father, and understand what his father gave to him, or contributed to him, to his education and so on. But it's a different set of love, it's a different set of feelings, because this is more on the surface, what I worked out with my mind, and why it makes sense to love this person. And the same with Yid with the Eibishter. There's part of the connection with Yid with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, is the love of Yid with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, because he's a Yid. And he has Yerusha as an inheritance of Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, this notion of Avas Hashem, the idea that he is completely connected to Kodesh Baruch Hu, and he is essentially has an essential love to Kodesh Baruch Hu, rather. And where does that come from? It just comes from because of the Ben Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. He's a Yid and he has a part, he has a neshama, and if he has a neshama is part of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So again, he's a Ben la Kodesh Baruch Hu. Yidden are called B'ni B'chei Yisrael, so he loves the Kodesh Baruch Hu. But that's Ava Mesuter, it's a hidden love. Then there's the love which comes as a production. It's produced by my pondering the greatness of Kodesh Baruch Hu, by my comprehensive understanding, my comprehensive understanding of the greatness of Kodesh Baruch Hu. And if you understand something thoroughly, it arouses automatically. It produces a feeling to this which you understand, or this which your intellect explains you the virtue of it and the greatness of it. So you have a feeling towards it. So the regular, the Beinani, the Aveda Tamal Beinani, the ideal Beinani, the perfect Beinani, is somebody who arouses or ponders in the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and arouses a true, tangible feeling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's what makes his decisions, to learn Torah and to stay away from him, and to, again, in Avos Hashem and in Yiras Hashem, it's fear from Hashem, of Hashem, again, to stay away from any mitzvahs laces. But then there is a lower level, but it's still associated with Avedas Hashem, but he arouses not a structured pondering or structured understanding and comprehensive understanding of the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which produces a tangible love, or overt and manifest love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but he arouses his innate love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, it's not something that he has a structured understanding of the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but he arouses some deep and an essential love and hidden love he has to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which also, that is what ultimately contributes to his decision to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to learn Torah and do mitzvahs. That's also a Beinani, which is Oved Hashem. Not with the Ava Gluya, the revealed, the manifest love, but the arousal of the deep love. Alim Shalal Yadav, through it, to govern Alatevash B'chalas Mali, in the nature of the left side, which is the Nefesh Baham, is the animal soul, which that's where nature within man comes from. Shazunika Gamkin Aveda. It's not the ideal Aveda, but it's also called Aveda. To fight in war with nature by Yetzer, the next page right by Yetzer, and the Yetzer Hara. Right, the nature and inclination, that he arouses the hidden love within his heart. As opposed to if he doesn't have any war at all, this love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that ultimately he's doing what Hashem wants. Because he's a Frumei Yid. He's a Frumei Yid to the extent that he's a Beinani. He never goes out of line with Shulchan Aruch. But because he doesn't serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's no struggle, there's no milchama, this love is not something which is associated with him. It's not his Aveda. Why is he learning Gemara, not picking up another book? Is because probably he's a Yid and he's a Frumei Yid and he wants to be a Frumei Yid and he's a Ben Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov, so we are inclined to learn Gemara instead of reading another book. And even again, the idea of it, even yesterday's avodah, something which I invested time and effort the day before, but because this became the norm, this became my second nature. And what am I doing? The next day I'm going to the same shir and learning Gemara. Why am I learning Gemara? Because I love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But I love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It was a overt love that I thought about the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which brought out with me an overt love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to Hashem. Not at all. I'm going back to the same shir because I have an innate love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that was nothing to do with me. It's given over to Avraham and Yaakov. I did not make it a struggle. I made sure not to learn even one moment, even more than I learned yesterday. And again, I'm used to it. This is something which is already incorporated into my system, into my nature. So here I'm doing the right thing. I'm a full Beinani. I never go out of line even once for Shulchan Aruch, but that's not my Aveda. It's just because I'm a Yid. I'm probably doing all the right things. And if it's not Aveda, it's a Beinani, 100% B'lei Avadeh. As opposed to the Beinani, which is Avadeh, which is again, the ideal Beinani is to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And even something which I got used to, which again, yesterday's service becomes today's norm and nature, so I do beyond. I do more. Because a Yid always looking because the Torah. And the question is, who cares? I'm serving doing HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says I have to be Oved Hashem. I'm always aligned with Shulchan Aruch. In Leisus it means, let's say, the answer is because we have a mandate in Torah. The same Neibishter tells us to put on tefillin, or any other mitzvah for that matter. We have a mitzvah of Vadatim es Hashem Elokeichem. Neibishter wants our toil, our struggle. We find in this week's parsha also. The Bnei Reuben wanted to settle in the Transjordan area, right? Calm, quiet. No, what did they say? It's not going to happen. It doesn't happen like that. All good things come through war. Go fight with your brothers, then come back. Let the brothers fight. We're not bothering him. No, it's a matter of milchama. This is in the picture of the parsha, but there's something to it in our lesson, and very much of it, or this what the Torah tells us and gives the mandate. I want you to serve. I want you to toil, and not in the way that when this becomes again something which is your second nature. It's a matter of Avodas Hashem, and it's Avodas Hashem, and if something I'm doing the right things, not because without any struggle, without any wars, it's not Aveda. Have a wonderful evening.